Join the journey, stay for a while.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of KohPhanCast, the official podcast of Copenhagen Island. And honestly, it's so surreal that I'm going to present the next guest, because for my 29th episode, I would never imagine that it will get this big. So thank you, and thank my new next guest, Simon Posford. Simon is one of the founding fathers of psychedelic trance music through projects like Younger Brother, Hallucinogen, Shpongle, and all the rest of the things that he's done until today. Wow, what can I even say? All around amazing human being, very vulnerable, very authentic. We talked about the older days, the newer days, the festivals, the dramas, the ups and downs, and I can't wait for you to see it. So before we get to the episode, guys, you know the drill. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, let me know in the comments what you thought about this conversation, share this episode, and let's get to it. KohPhanCast, the official podcast of Copenhagen Island. Enjoy the episode. Simon, I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
100%. It's my pleasure. Usually I start this with complimenting my guest, and sometimes I did need to think about how should I compliment my guest, but something about you just makes... You've raised 3 generations of musicians, of music lovers, of music appreciators, of people just want to explore themselves, their surroundings, their psychedelic and consciousness and all of that. And on behalf of me and everyone else, I just want to say thank you for everything that you contribute.
Well, thank you. 3 generations, that makes me feel very old.
3 generations, old, wise, and very, very, one of the founding fathers of this thing. I know, we're all not that good in taking compliments, but it is what it is. And when credit is due, I like to be the one giving it.
God bless you. Thank you.
100%. For the 3 to 4 people out there that does not know you, can you give like 40 seconds of introduction on...
Yeah, I'm Simon. I make music under all kinds of names, but the most popular ones being Shpongle, Hallucinogen, and Younger Brother. That's about it.
And honestly, that's enough. I know that specifically Younger Brother was a project that shaped the way I see reality. One of them, including like artists like Eugen Merkaba, we've got Scintilla, and this whole environment of like, it's so easy to do, like go into Psy Trance and these days, but bringing this vibe of a little bit something that is more fluid, has more air in it, it's amazing. And for me, let's go straight into it. Before you started making music, what was the force behind it, and how did you get yourself into this spot of starting to create music?
Before I started making music, I was a child. So I started making music at about 7 or 8 by watching a friend of mine at school who was already brilliant at piano and was writing his own songs on the piano. I mean, we were children, so they sounded like children's songs. And then when nobody was around, I'd sneak back to the piano and think, okay, he was doing this, and I'd figure out sort of how to play and what he was doing. And then very quickly found that I could write my own songs too. And so I had my first band. I then formed a band with him. He, by that point, had moved on to drums and was brilliant at drums already. And so we did our first gig, age 10, with piano and drums, and a friend of ours who was sort of like Bez from the Happy Mondays with maracas and would, play the jester. And we did a little gig at school. So that was my first entry into music then, I guess.
And how did it feel for you as someone that, I want to make music, and then you get to your, I don't know, you can call it a gig, the first time you're up in front of people, and what's the energy like?
I felt awkward. The truth is, I'm not really a performer. I don't really like the attention. I don't really like being on stage. It's very nice, of course, to get the feedback from the audience, which is great. But then when I got older and wanted to pursue music as a career, I always thought I would be behind the glass, like engineering, producing, making the music. In those days, there was no internet, so you could make a living from writing music and releasing albums. It seems crazy to think now, but back then, record companies would pay for the tour as the sort of throwaway cost to help for the real business of selling records. Whereas now, no one buys records anymore, so you sort of give the music away almost for free.
Yeah.
And now it's the real business of playing shows and doing tours.
And how did this shift, we're going a little bit forward, but how was this shift for you as an artist that at the end of the day, all you wanted to do is to sit at the studio and make music, and suddenly you're kind of, I don't know if being forced is the right word.
Being forced sounds a bit harsh, but, I was a little disappointed.
Yeah.
It's not really what I wanted to do, but it's okay. As I say, you get so much reward from feeling the energy from the fans when you do play.
Yeah.
And, just to feel blessed and absolute gratitude to discover that, people actually like what I do is an amazing feeling in itself.
Absolutely. Do you remember the time that, like, when was the creating music just for the hell of creating music got shaped into a specific project that you want to do, or a specific, when did you understand that this is something that you're going to do for the rest of your life?
I mean, when I was like 13, 14, I always wanted to do music. The truth is, I'm not really very good at anything else. So music was always what I wanted to do. When I left school, I'd written, even while I was at school, I wrote to all the studios looking for jobs. I sent my demo tape of my bands to all the record companies. They all wrote back saying, no thanks, it's not for us. And so then when I left school, I went straight into Virgin Recording Studios. Olympic Studios is one of the great studios of the world, actually, where everyone from Led Zeppelin, Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, everybody's recorded there. Yeah. My first session was, I think, one of the first ones was at the KLF.
Oh, no.
Which was great. And I was introduced to Spike Stent then, who was still one of my heroes of the mix engineering world. He's an amazing mix engineer. He does everything from Bjork, Massive Attack, to hip-hop, to really commercial stuff. Harry Styles, everything. Every hit record, the Spice Girls, so many of the hit records, Spike will have mixed it.
And you started by mixing and doing like studio work for those
I started as a tape op, which is invalid as a human being, basically. Making tea and, pandering to the fevered egos of these big rock stars.
Yeah.
And plugging wires in and packing up at the end of the day. And in those days, of course, there was no computers or anything really. So you had to do something called a total recall, which means that every knob in the studio, all the equipment, including the mixing desk, you had to write down where everything was plugged in. You had to write down every setting of every knob in the studio and button in the studio. It took hours. Is the worst part of the job.
Hours seems like it's like a lot of time to do a job like that. and how did it feel? Because from your vibe, I get that like you were one of the people that like you were there, you're making tea, you're doing all this job, but your eyes are just shining just from being able to be there and to do those things.
I was, it's a 18-hour-a-day job. I'd sleep on the sofa sometimes. But I always throughout had this drive to make music myself. So all that time while I was working in the studio, I had a band and I couldn't really play with the band because all the time I'm in the studio hoping for some free time to be able to bring my band into the studio, which never happened. The studio's always busy. And so I ended up doing that, and then eventually getting fed up with not being able to make my own music. And actually, it was Spike Stent that spoke to me and said, we were doing a session with Youth, the producer who started Dragonfly Records, which was one of the early sort of Goa labels. He was a pioneer of the whole trance scene in that way. And we were working on a band called James. And I don't know if you remember them.
Honestly, I don't.
They had a big hit called Sit Down. Oh, sit down. Oh, sit down.
That I know, yeah.
And they'd just come off tour and were an absolute nightmare. Used to sort of hotel rooms and everyone running around doing everything for them.
Yeah.
And it was a really hard session. And so Spike pulled me aside one day and said, Simon, I can tell you're not really happy here, and you want to make your own music. You keep playing me your fucking demo tapes. Do you know Youth is looking for someone to work for him, to be an engineer, work in his studio? I think it would be a really good fit. You both smoke pot, and
it's good enough connection.
And you'll be able to make your own music as well and engineer more stuff, less making tea, more engineering. And I didn't really know who Youth was at the time, but I thought, do I stay with Virgin and this sort of a very assured career path where, eventually you spend 5 years being an assistant, then you become an engineer and eventually a producer. And, it was one of the last sort of true apprenticeships left. There aren't many jobs left where you have a true apprenticeship and you do your time and you learn and learn and learn and eventually sort of rise to the top through learning off your betters and greaters. Do I stay with Virgin and sort of eventually I'll be a great producer, but maybe not be able to make my own music? Or do I go and work for this mad hippie who had just got back from Goa and I don't really know who he is? Would he even be able to pay me? Who knows? But I'll be able to make my own music. And so it was to make my own music.
100%.
And in fact, one of the Virgin Studios was, they had three. They had Olympic, they had the Townhouse in London, which is where I ended up. I worked in the mastering there. They had a mastering house where I met Kevin Metcalf, who mastered all my records. But back then, I was a lowly tape op, so I was just making tea for them. But every time I'd go into his room, I'd be like, this guy's, everything always sounds great in his room. He had it up loud. Everything that came on his vinyl that he cut sounded super bassy and loud. There was a record I remember by LFO back then. It was probably 1990, something like that, maybe. LFO's first record. It had a lot of sub bass, and Kevin cut that record. And it's hard to get a lot of bass onto vinyl. It takes skill because, the vinyl goes, the more bass you have, the more sort of bumps there are on the vinyl. And so if you cut it wrong, the needle can fly out off the record. And Kevin cut this record, and we had so many phone calls to the mastering studio saying, who cut this record? This is amazing. How did it get so much bass on it? And so I thought, I'll remember this guy for later. And he mastered all my stuff until he retired, sadly, recently.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Because I think mastering's it's very different now.
Yes.
Everything is so loud and so trebly, and to me sounds so awful.
Yeah,
honestly.
that's the war these days of like, it's not even about how, and I'm not disrespecting anyone out there, do whatever you want, but the fact that it's loud mean that it's good?
Yeah, it's because of DJs, really, because, even 1 dB louder will sound better than the track before it. And so when a DJ comes on, he wants to sound louder than the DJ before.
Yeah.
And so everyone's just squashing their music, and so there's no dynamics. It's just so loud.
Yeah. And back to the thing that you said, sorry to cut you off, of course. When you had this choice, either I'm going to stay over there at what was it?
At Olympic.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I had the offer to go and do they had 3 studios. They had the Manor was the other one, which was Richard Branson, who owned Virgin, his house or his old house. It was a beautiful sort of ancient English mansion in the countryside in Oxfordshire with lakes and swimming pools, squash courts, tennis courts, and it was a residential studio. So you lived there with the band, which is why all the other tape ops hated it, because no one had a car.
Yeah.
But as it turned out, I only lived down the road anyway.
Oh, wow.
And so I could probably leave if I wanted. And I'd never actually got to go to the Manor. They always assigned me sessions at Olympic and Townhouse. And suddenly I had this option to go and do The Cure, which was my favourite band as a teenager.
Oh, wow.
And, that was the music I was really obsessed with when I was 15. And to go and do The Cure at the Manor or go and work for Youth, but be able to make my own music.
Yeah.
Even that, I turned down the Manor. And then gutting it, very disappointing. I told Youth about it after I'd worked for him for a couple of months. I said, I had this offer to go and do The Cure at the Manor. And he said, oh, man, you should have done it and then come and work for me afterwards. It's like, oh, damn, I didn't realize that was an option.
At the end of the day, the everlasting question of should I stay in my comfort zone or should I pursue what I actually want? It's timeless. It's everyone has it. And at the end of the day, it's all a matter of perspective. Are the things that you want to do important enough for you to be scared a little bit? Or should I just go on with discomfort?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to stay in your comfort zone, isn't it? But if you want to progress or do anything different, you have to challenge yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's even my music's always been like that. Like the trance, I did the trance because I didn't know how to make trance. My first track was LSD, and I was trying to rip off sort of things like The Age of Love by Jam and Spoon, very famous track. Alienated by Earth Nation, Sven Vath's label on, I think, Heart House, IQ.
You're talking big names.
Records, all this kind of stuff. And I didn't know how they did it, but I sort of wanted to learn. And in doing LSD, I sort of learned how to doing the track LSD.
Yeah.
I learned sort of how to do it. And then sort of got bored. And then it was like, actually, I want to do some down tempo. Let's do, when we started Shpongle.
Yeah.
And then all the time, I just wanted to try something different. Oh, let's do something in 7/8 time signature. I've never done that before. Let's do electronic, but let's bring in some live instruments. Let's make it more organic. And
again and again. And you can hear it on your music, the going out of your comfort zone, out of the box, like understanding that the box that we put ourselves in our mind doesn't exist at the end of the day, and it's all in what we decide to put us in ourselves. And at what point did you see that the psychedelic theme of going inside and not just making not playing, but like regular music, at what point did you see that you're going that road?
I guess, when I tried psychedelics, I mean, all music from, whenever I've done it, it's all sort of, a very sort of going inside process.
Yeah.
It feels very meditative. And one thing I love about the studio is it cuts everything else from your life out. It's such focus on what you're doing that you can't think about your bills and, the chores that you have to do in the house and all these other things. The only thing that matters is the next sound, the next riff, making the song, finishing the song, creating.
Yeah. And you released your first track, LSD. What's going on out there? What kind of responses are you getting? How do you feel towards what you just released? How is the whole experience feels like for you?
It was sort of mixed. I was very shy, and I just wanted to be accepted by the scene. I was going to these parties, which, back then it was all free parties out in the countryside somewhere. I never went to Goa because I was too busy in the studio making tunes. And I'd send it, and we recorded it on DAT tapes back then, digital audio tapes, and I'd send it out to Youth and give it to friends. And then I knew something was happening when all the DJs started coming to my house and trying to get new music. Oh, Si, what have you got? Let's know. Give us a tune.
Hook us up.
And I met everyone from, Ollie Wisdom came through, and then eventually Rick Tam and Bunzy, who were only 16 back then.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I realised perhaps something is happening. But then there were still sort of, people who, I won't name names, but people who were maybe less accepting and say, oh, this is really commercial and stuff like that. And I thought, it doesn't sound so commercial to me.
Yeah.
And I think if you compare trance now to back then, and the trance now that most people do, the popular stuff, is way more commercial, I think.
Yeah.
We all just want to be accepted and
at the end of the day.
love,
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Just it's all a matter of and these days, I assure it's exactly like the old days of you have people that want to see things outside the box, and you have people that wants everything to stay exactly the same lane. So those are exactly the same people that will tell you, oh, it sounds to this or sounds to that.
Exactly that. This isn't trance.
The representation of this idea comes across in a lot of different people in a lot of different timelines. Right. It's not a matter of whether it's 2000, 2030 or 3156. There's always going to be someone to represent this approach. And it is what it is, and people tell you it sounds commercial. What the fuck are you talking about? How do you respond to it as a person that is a little bit more shy, more trying to fit in? Do you take it?
You just carry on and do more music.
Yeah.
That's, I think it's good. And in my determination to show you that it's good, I'm going to make another tune, and you're going to see this is good. It will work on the dance floor. I promise you. It will work if you're on psychedelics. This is psychedelic music. This is, will tweak your brain and you'll have a lot of fun.
How do you make the translation between what psychedelic art is meaning in your brain into creating what is going to work while someone is on psychedelics, if you understand what I did?
Yeah, I can't really give an answer to that. Only, I knew what affected me on psychedelics, hearing stuff that sort of affected me. And so I try some of those same tricks in my tunes. But it's more just sort of, you hear that and your brain adjusts, it's mind expanding, the psychedelic experience. Yeah. And so, you get to a point where you don't want to hear sort of The Cure, for example, music that I grew up with and I loved. You don't want to hear vocals and, someone singing about love lost, love gained or whatever. You want to hear weird alien, weird
I know, that's
shit,
what I want to hear, yeah.
Sounds that make you go, what is that? Where's that coming from? What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And so it's not like I particularly try, okay, I'm going to make this weird alien sound. It's just that's what I liked and that's what I was drawn to when making sounds.
And that's exactly it, because I truly believe that we all have something in our hearts that is connecting between all of us. And the main thing in life is this collective consciousness that if I know how to get into myself clean enough with good intentions, when my heart is pure, when everything is, I don't want to hurt anyone, I just want to give and allow, then if I know what works for me, most of the times, the people that are truly clean with themselves are gonna see it in the same eye. So the key to your answer that you said exactly at the start was, I knew what worked for me.
Yeah, well, all my music, even now, and always, I just had faith that my taste in music wasn't so weird that no one's going to like it. If I make something that I like, there's going to be other people that share the same taste and the same, that are a part of the same tribe, and they're going to love it as well. I'm not so weird that, I'm going to be out on my own there, making the stuff that only I like. But when I make the music, I only make it for me. I'm not making it for anyone else.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of original creation. You know, you're not trying to copy something that was already made. You're trying to bring a new voice.
That's not necessarily true.
Okay.
Some of the best stuff I've done is trying to copy things and failing. So, you know, I would recommend if you're a young artist or a young musician going, how do I do this? How do I find my sound? It's okay to copy other people and start with that, especially at the very beginning, because you won't be able to copy it. You know, that's what I did. I tried to, the amount of times I tried to copy On the Run by Pink Floyd off Dark Side of the Moon and failed, but got my own sort of
what you're
weird
saying
sound from it.
You trying to go in a direction doesn't mean that you really copy it. It means that it's one of the influences that you have on you.
Some inspiration.
Yeah.
Now I've got to the point where I could pretty much copy something if I wanted to very well. So now I don't do that so much. But now also I don't really listen to a lot of, you know, if I was to make a Psytrance track, which I haven't for a long time, to be fair, but I wouldn't really listen to other Psytrance. And when I started making Psytrance, it wasn't really other Psytrance that was inspiring me, because there wasn't much around. You know, there was myself, Total Eclipse, Juno Reactor, Nick Doof, Green Nuns. You know, there weren't many of us around back then.
Yeah. This thing that they call these days Gotrance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know about the different genres. And
yeah.
Because back in the day, they were like, don't call it Goa Trance. They hated it when you called it Goa Trance, because they didn't want Goa being sort of overrun and becoming commercial.
Oh, I see. Yeah, at the end of the day, words is just the best way we can perceive energy and perceive
Well, you need
concept.
to communicate.
Exactly.
So, you know, people, you know, like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like my dad always asks, how do I describe your music to someone else?
You don't?
And I would just call it electronica. That covers anything.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
But, you know, it's more for sort of journalists and people who need to describe the music and need to put it in a genre. But when you're making the music, you certainly don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah, and you're going through the trance scene. And we're already at the 90s. You already has the first project that you've done that was yours for like crowds of psychedelic parties was
Purple On, which was my first band. And when I went to youth and started engineering, and he quickly gave me a record deal, which was great, with my band Purple On at the time. And that was sort of kind of hippie, folk, electronic, sort of inspired by, you know, stuff we listened to, like the Osric Tentacles, Gong, things like that. But we weren't really good enough to sound like that. You know, we sort of had our own sound. And we did a few gigs at trance parties where they were playing trance and stuff as well. And we tried to be psychedelic, often sort of by mistake. I remember one time we took some acid punch, which the whole party was given, but I didn't realize that the band's punch, everyone in the bands, had been additionally spiked.
Oh, wow.
And so I was drinking this stuff, and I kept spitting out bits of paper. What is this? I'm getting really thirsty and drinking more and more, more drinks. It's more and more punch. Until, you know, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was happening, what was going on. And had sort of gone beyond music, and just all I could do was just make weird sounds on my keyboard and, you know, oh, this sounds good. I'm just going to do this. And, you know, we had some chaotic gigs like that in the early days.
Those people got...
before Hallucinogen. And then Hallucinogen sort of started at the same time. And then Purple On started sort of dying. And, you know, I wanted to make trance at that point.
What was your message out with the rise of Hallucinogen?
I would say I'm not a preacher. I didn't really have a message as such to give to anyone. You know, all I felt was love and creativity. If that's the message to give out, then
it's the best message to give out. Yeah?
But, you know, really all I wanted to do was just make music and then hear it on the dance floor, because I knew I had faith that it was trippy, it was dancey, and that some people would like it. And I just wanted to give it to the DJs and let them play it. I wouldn't say it's sort of a message type thing. That was one of the things I loved about it. The bands that I loved before psychedelics were, The Cure, New Model Army. I always loved sort of angry bands and political bands. Yeah. And, they had a message, and I liked it. And The Cure, not so much, but I liked a good angry message.
Yeah.
Was sort of what I wanted to hear back then. But when you're on the dance floor, you don't want to hear that.
No. And okay, so when did you see that you're starting to get traction with Hallucinogen? People started to hear the music. There's some sort of wave going around. Do you have a trigger that was like the point in your life that you said, oh, shit's working?
I don't know. I mean, I still get insecure even now, when I play at somewhere like Azora, say, where it's thousands and thousands of people. And if you speak to any of my friends, they'll tell you, I'm always like backstage going, oh God, are they going to like this? No one wants to hear this old shit from 30 years ago, do they really? And, yes, just all my friends, Psy, just go and do it.
Go there, press play. Just press play.
Just do it. And, thank goodness. And I hope I've got the gig coming up in Thailand on the 14th.
Oh, yes.
I hope people are going to like it still.
So let's jump
before I go on stage, I'll be nervous. I'll be wondering, are people going to like this?
And I see it as a sign of genuinity, like when you really love something, like it looks like you would have done it for
you care, it's only from a message of caring.
Yeah.
I just want it to be good. I want people to have a good time.
Yeah, and I don't think you can do something for 30 years consecutively without wanting it to sound the best and wanting to tweak it to be the best. So it just makes sense that you're kind of, anxious about it. Completely makes sense.
I think if you're too confident, then it's
it's kind of losing.
Be good.
Yeah. So let's jump to the event. I've been to the last one last year, and it was a beautiful event, and the set was amazing. I've seen people connecting with C's family that used to teach them your ways and this and that. Completely amazing event. How was it for you?
It was a long set for me, so I was booked to do the 4 hours. And so I was very nervous about that. And also it was one of the first times that I was mixing, normally you have a chill out stage and you have a trance stage. On the trance stage, I would play Hallucinogen. Yeah. On the chill out stage, I would play Shpongle. But in a 4-hour set, I'm going to have to mix it all together, mixing from Shpongle to Hallucinogen to Younger Brother. It's not all Psy Trance and it's not all down tempo. And I'm aware that a lot of people there are from like sort of yoga, ecstatic dance sort of vibe. And, probably don't really want to hear much Psy Trance. And then also there's going to be a lot of people that just want to really dance hard and hear the Psy Trance and maybe not hear so much down tempo stuff. So, I was very stressed about trying to mix it all together and trying to get a journey that is coherent. The psychedelic sets are all really about a journey, aren't they? And so, I wanted to make it coherent. And when I came off afterwards, I was rarely quite pleased. Normally I'm not so satisfied with my sets, but I was quite proud of myself for mixing all this kind of cross-genre stuff, playing tracks in 7/8, but also, going Psy Trance to Hallucinogen. But I think that's one of the benefits of the project Hallucinogen being so old now. 30 years old or whatever it is, 35 years old.
It's amazing.
That it can fit in sort of modern Shpongle. You have something like Strange Planet, one of our tracks, which although it's slow, it has a sort of heavier modern sound. And so then you can put a hallucinogen after to sort of speed up and pick it up. And it's not just pounding Psytrance, and it will mix more with something like Shpongle now. So actually it works okay. And because it's my music, I know my music so well.
Yeah.
It's, I wouldn't say it's easy to do because it's always a challenge, but you've just got to know your music and have faith, I think.
It's so genuine, vulnerable, and authentic that you say that, like, I don't know how the set is going to be. I don't know if they're going to like it when the entire event, everybody is there strictly to see you. That's a sign.
That only makes me more nervous.
Yeah, that's a sign.
I don't want to disappoint.
Of course. But that's a sign of someone that is truly is not in there like, oh, I know who I am, I know what I do, I know everything, that it's going to be perfect, it's going to be beautiful. Just allowing it to be what it's going to be and trying to make the most out of it.
Yeah.
So
someone asked me recently, what to expect. I'm doing these shows in America in April, and 6 shows of New York, Denver, and San Francisco. And someone was like, oh, my friend wants to come and he's asking, what should I expect? And my answer is always to have no expectations. If you have no expectations, then you'll have a better time, yes. I think. Yes. If you have expectations, then you're already locked into a mindset, which means that you can be disappointed.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they are going to disappoint themselves by having the expectation.
And even myself, when I do my set, I'll have the track that I'm going to start with, and then hopefully the track I'm going to finish with. I'll have that in mind, and where I sort of go in between, you just have to sort of feel the energy of the crowd and sort of create the journey on the fly and just trust in the process.
Was the first time that you performed here in Copacabana?
Yeah.
And how did it feel coming here for the first time, seeing everything?
It was beautiful. I'd actually been here before.
Yeah, of
course.
To
without performing, just for a holiday.
Yeah.
So it was great. And then to perform, I mean, back then when I first came here, the only thing seemed to be like the full moon parties, which were not my scene at all. It was very commercial. It was people drinking alcohol out of buckets, and
they still do it.
All I could think was, how do they clean the beach after this?
They try. It's like 100 people going around trying to clean it, but it's only getting more and more dirty.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's the same everywhere, sadly, with plastic getting everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But so to come and perform, I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I was like, is there even a psychedelic crowd here, or is it still Australians drinking out of buckets?
And now it's British people.
Yeah. And British people are always fond of their alcohol and everywhere.
And you're getting into the venue for sound checks and things like that. You're seeing the beautiful side of this island, and you're like, are you excited? You're nervous?
Yeah, both those things.
Yeah.
Slightly terrified, also excited, and, just hope people are going to have a good time, and hope I'm going to have a good time, and hope that I can last 4 hours.
4 hours is not an easy
task.
time. Yeah.
For me, because I don't normally play that long set. And then I always try and get as short a set as possible. And then, of course, when it gets to the end of the set, I'm like, oh, I can play this. I didn't play this. So I could go on for a lot longer. So I've done a few longer sets, but not many. And like I say, to try and mix all the Shpongle with the Psy Trance and younger brother stuff with vocals, it's tricky.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like correct me if I'm wrong, each project that you are creating, at the end of the day, whether it's only you or it's you and someone else, in creativity together, it shows a certain side of your personality, of your heart, of who you are. And when you have so many tracks from so many different kind of projects, you're just like, every set seemed like building a wall and filling the bricks with parts of your soul. This will go here and this will go there. It can be faster, it can be slower, it can be more psychedelic, it can be more like only like kick, it can, but at the end of the day, it's you out there.
Yeah, well, your soul, you can't help but you have your soul infuse everything. The KLF wrote a book, it's not a very well-known book, called The Manual, How to Have a UK #1 Hit, or debut UK #1 hit. And it was a very funny book. It was sort of slightly cynical, slightly tongue-in-cheek, but also actually very accurate. So step one, for example, was if you're in a band, quit. If you've got any musical instruments, sell them. It was all this sort of funny but also true stuff, and with nuggets of wisdom in there. It was basically go into a studio, because it was the end of the 80s when they wrote it, which was when the charts were full of DJ records and sampling had come out, and sort of early 90s, I guess, as well. And it really seemed like you could do anything. You could go into the studio, get a good engineer, and just play him your favorite records and rip it off. That whole thing was just, rip it off. So, their first hit was called Doctor Who. They sampled the theme from Doctor Who. They sampled Gary Glitter's band.
Of course. There's a whole site called Who Sampled, just to see where the samples came from.
Yeah. And then the Orb came along. They were all mates, the KLF and the Orb. Their whole record was full of all kinds of strange and weird and manipulated samples. Anyway, in this book, one of the nuggets of wisdom they said was that there could be two records. You could make, just say, a kick drum. You both have a kick drum at the same tempo, the same speed, and undoubtedly one record would be better than the other. And it's because your soul, you can't avoid it. Your soul goes in there and, infuses into the music, whatever. So, and also you can't really escape yourself sometimes. So, I don't know if I could really make some music that doesn't sound like Simon. All my projects kind of sound.
You are who you are at the end of the day.
Yeah. And all my records sort of have a little bit of me in them, for sure. I think if you're a big fan, you can tell, oh yeah, I think Simon was involved with that one.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, and I can totally understand why it feels so vulnerable to just expose yourself out there, because, saying this is me, take me for who I am, it can be scary.
It can be.
It can be scary because you are out for judging and whatever. Because honestly, if we separate the music and the internal thing that you go through, I think I go through exactly the same, that this one-sided imposter syndrome and the other sided of like, who am I to be getting all of this compliments and all this road and this and that, and like, but that's a sign, and I'm saying it for you and for me as well, that's a sign that you're doing something that is real, that you're doing something.
I think everyone has insecurity, but you can't be coming from a place of insecurity. The insecurity isn't the thing you're projecting. Of course I'm insecure about it, but by going up there and playing, you're overcoming the insecurity. And I'm like, no, I know I can do this. I know I can convince you that to dance to this, I know that at least some of you are going to like this.
Yeah. Some of you are going to like it. The rest of you are going to think about it. Sometimes planting a seed is more important than looking at a tree.
Yeah. Some people hate it, but that's fine too. We all have our own tastes, but you have to try.
Yeah. And now having one event that you already done here, coming for the second time on the 13th of March, next Friday. What do you think are you going to go for a different kind of, is it just going to be?
Well, I can't even really remember what I did last time. So, I didn't plan it out. There's no like order of set that I have in my mind.
Sets?
No, I don't think so. So, I'll come up with the first track. I'm a bit more nervous because this time it is actually 4 hours. But I do remember feeling at the end of the 3.5 hours oh, actually, this wasn't so bad. It was sort of easy. Well, it wasn't easy, but it was a lot easier than I thought. And I do still have I could play another half hour. I didn't play this. I've got, several tracks that I still want to play. So we'll see. As for, how what I'm going to do, the journey, you never really know until you get there. You have to sort of read the crowd, which is one of the experiences you get as a DJ and as a sensitive person. You get to feel the energy and, feel what, where people want to go. And sometimes you go with them and you sort of surf that energy. And then sometimes you have to take more of a leading role and you lead people a certain way. And you're like, okay, trust me, we're going to go this way instead.
Give me your hand. It's going to be all right. I'm going to take you there. It's all going to be fine. I know what I'm doing. Yeah. At some point, you just got to understand that, the guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I hope so.
And when you think about you being when you were an amateur music producer and DJ, versus now you being an expert one, looking at newer, like amateur DJs and music producers, what tip would you have given yourself 30 years back that you usually give to people these days?
I would probably say be kind to yourself and don't worry too much. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. In terms of sort of, real sort of practical tips, I don't know, because I'm not really sure I learned any particular practical tips. Every time I'm still learning. For example, I never even had CDJs at home. So, first of all, I was DJing on DAT tapes. I did have DAT machines at home. And then my first gig on CDs, I learned how to do it on the stage. It was trial by fire. You're just going to get up there and do it. And you get there's the play button. And then, getting things in time was pretty easy because in the old days, you have to get beats in time. When I'm making tunes, you have to get beats in time with a sampler, which is you're just using your ear and this dial, and you just twist the dial to try and get it in time. And now you get it all on a screen, so you can line up waveforms and things like that. And there are things that will get it in time automatically. And even DJing, there's now a sync button, which I don't actually know how that works. I'm like, unplug all that, turn all that stuff off. I don't know how it works. As I say, I don't have the CDJ, so I learn on stage. Maybe one day I'll try using the sync and see if I learn how to do that.
I can help you with that for sure. I'm the best at syncs. What do you think, like, when you look back on, you played everywhere, you've done everything in this kind of realm. Do you remember one show that went straight into your heart, that you felt aligned, you felt like...
I mean, so many, but the one what stands out as sort of the pinnacle of my career to me was last time we played Red Rocks, the full live band in Colorado. Yeah. First of all, Red Rocks itself is such a beautiful venue, in these ancient, great big red rocks. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. U2 came out with a video live at Red Rocks. Yeah. They played an amazing set there. And I thought, where is this place? This place looks just stunning. And to find myself suddenly there, I've told you about how I'm always nervous. You can imagine there, I was really shitting myself. And so I had to remind myself before the gig, I was like, don't forget to at some point, just, look up, see the crowd and just enjoy it. And, when I did do that and felt the love coming from the crowd, and then I looked around me, all the people on stage were my friends that I'd met throughout my career. Yeah. There was Raja Ram, who I first started Shpongle with back in the day. There was Michelle Adamson, who was the first time we had someone singing on Shpongle, and was my girlfriend even back in the day. And then to Joe Russo, the drummer, was the first time we came to America as younger brother, and we played a festival called Camp Bisco. And Benji and I were like, oh, we're the only ones who have got laptops here, playing off laptops. Everyone else is playing in a band. It was the jam band scene, which, you know, coming from the trance scene, the jam band scene seemed like a perfect extension of where we'd come from, because all the fans, they loved acid and they were into acid.
That's not surprising at all.
And they loved music. They loved bands and stuff. So we vowed to come back and form a band. And so we met Brownie, the bass player of the Disco Biscuits. And we're like, you know, we need a drummer. And he's like, oh, Zach from Sound Tribe Sector 9, he would be good. And then we're walking around the festival, and then we see this amazing two-piece with this incredible drummer and an unbelievable keyboard player. Wow. With this incredible sounds with just the two of them. We're like, who is that guy? And I was like, oh, that's Joe Russo, the drummer. He would totally do it. And so we first gig was Younger Brother with Joe Russo. And then there was, you know, we had a guy on clarinet and horns who I toured with Beats Antique in America, and I met him there. And then Durga McBroom, who sang with Pink Floyd, who I'd met with Youth back in the day. She sang in Blue Pearl, was her project back then. And so all these people I'd sort of met on my career, and it was sort of like looking round. It was like seeing a history of my life, not so much my career.
Yeah.
You know, it was incredible. And then the crowd, and it's an amphitheater, so you can see the whole crowd, and just feeling the love. And the performers, we had 50 performers. We had, a band of sort of about 30 people, band and crew. And, you know, honestly, it brought tears to my eyes. It made me sort of cry and forget what I'm playing.
Yeah. It's like your whole life and your whole heart is just lays there on a table with all the people that used to, you know, be a part of the journey.
Yeah, they were all there.
Yeah.
It was incredible. So that would be one. The first time I went to Japan is probably up there as well. I think we did a sort of cut down Shpongle at in the shadow of Mount Fuji, which was incredible, and with the Solstice guys, and just, you know, to go to somewhere like Japan as a Westerner at first, it's such a culture shock that I just loved it. You know, everything. I couldn't understand the fonts. So when you're walking down the street, you don't know what anything is. I played in a club called Liquid Room, which we come to like what looks like, I don't know, a shopping mall or something like that, and we go up in an elevator to the 12th floor or somewhere, you know, like high up in the building. Like, where on earth are we going? We're doing a bit of shopping before we go to the gig. And then the door opens up many stories up, and we're in a nightclub suddenly.
Oh, wow.
And then being Japan, the technology was so good. They had subwoofers under the floor. So we were playing with Extreme, I remember, who I was, as you know, a fan. I was a big fan of them. So I was out on the dance floor. You know, back in the day when I could go out on the dance floor, no one had phones and weren't like, Simon, can I have a picture, please? Just one picture. You know, I could enjoy it. And then to feel that the dance floor, they had subwoofers under the floor that would bounce with every
feel the force.
You could really feel it, and it moved your body. And a crystal clear sound system to hear the music like that.
Do you have any landscape or a place or a venue that you do want to have a show that you didn't do it till now?
I've always wanted to do sort of our own festival and curate. You know, we talk in our sort of Shpongle mythology, we often talk about Shpongle land, you know, where is Shpongle land? And we always imagined it as a sort of, you know, an inner verse, whereas actually it would be nice to sort of try and create an outer verse, a universe of Shpongle land, where it's all super trippy and fluoro and psychedelic, and, you know, with our friends playing and curate this. It would have to be probably a festival, I think. You know, and that's probably my next challenge, is to maybe work on something like that. You got to keep yourself challenged. But it's getting hard now. With, you know, Raj is 84 years old, so to do the Shpongle band now is going to be very hard for him. I don't think we can do that again, in all honesty, sadly.
But it is what it is, you know, and some pieces are meant to be with time, you know, some pieces are timeless. The recording, the sets are all over there, and honestly, I'm not going to take any more of your time, and I just want to say that the whole road is just so beautiful, and thank you for this conversation. Thank you for doing it.
Wow, we're finishing it already.
Man, I can go for 3 more hours.
I barely got my trousers off.
That's exactly what
I'm ready
I'm saying.
for a 4-hour set.
So I'm just going to ask you a last question. Over the last 35 years of your career, what is the key ingredient of the evolution of your passion towards what you're doing? And if I can add one more thing, the big question for me is, when stripped from everything that you did, and what do you want to be remembered for?
Well, I want to be remembered for my music, and maybe, you know, from the people that know me, for my love and creativity, you know, and I'd like to be remembered as a kind person. I'm not sure I am kind. We can all be cruel. But, you know, ultimately where I've really channeled my passion is the music. And so, you know, if I leave a mess, I didn't have children, I'm not going to be Mick Jagger having children when I'm 70, most likely.
You never say never.
Never say never, but,
No.
you know.
If someone wants to make kids to this guy,
send me an email. Who knows? But, you know, my passion and what I've been married to all my life is the music. And I just hope the music lives on and is eternal.
Beautiful. Simon, thank you so much for this.
Thank you all.
Guys.
It's been a pleasure.
KohPhanCast.
We could talk for hours.
Yeah. 14th of March.
14th of March at the Half Moon.
Yeah. Half Moon Festival venue.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm
be there. It's going to be, I hope it's going to be good. I don't know what I'm going to do.
We all know it's going to be good. We all know it's going to be good.
I do know I will do my best, and that's all I can offer.
Join the journey, stay for a while.